Imagine a world of knights and castles, of epic battles and profound faith, where the seeds of the modern era were sown amidst chaos and transformation. Welcome to the story of medieval Europe, a saga spanning 1,000 years filled with struggle, innovation, and the birth of a continent's identity. Buckle up, because we're about to journey through centuries of history, from the fall of an empire to the dawn of the modern age, uncovering how Europe as we know it came to be. Let's start at the beginning, around the first couple of centuries of the Common Era. Picture the mighty Roman Empire, a colossal power stretching across the Mediterranean Sea. It was an era of peace and prosperity, often called Pax Romana. People lived in relative safety, enjoying a decent standard of living, vibrant culture, and impressive infrastructure. Roads connected far-flung regions, aqueducts brought water to cities, and a strong central government kept things running smoothly. But even in this golden age, change was brewing. In the distant eastern edges of the empire, a new faith emerged: Christianity. What started as a tiny Jewish sect grew quietly among the pagan Romans. By the 4th century, it had gained such influence that emperors embraced it, making Christianity the official religion of the empire. This was a turning point, but not all was well. The Roman Empire was buckling under its own weight. Inflation skyrocketed, plagues ravaged populations, famines struck, and invaders pressed at the borders. Governing this vast territory from one central point became impossible. In 395 CE, the empire split into two halves: the Western Roman Empire, with Rome as its heart, and the Eastern Roman Empire, ruled from Constantinople, later known as the Byzantine Empire. The East thrived, urban, wealthy, and powerful. The West, however, was rural, poor, and vulnerable. It couldn't hold on. Beyond the empire's northern borders, in the dense forests, barbarian tribes, mostly Germanic peoples led by fierce warlords, were stirring. They pushed against the Rhine and Danube rivers, desperate to cross into Roman lands. With little choice, the Western Empire began letting them in, either as settlers or invaders. The borders eventually collapsed. Various tribes carved up Roman territory as the empire's authority crumbled. In 476 CE, a barbarian leader named Odoacer overthrew the last Western Roman emperor, a young boy named Romulus Augustus, who held no real power. This moment marked the end of the Western Roman Empire. What followed is often called the Dark Ages, a time of uncertainty, but also the foundation of something new. Three key elements shaped medieval Europe: the legacy of the Romans, the rise of Christianity, and the influence of barbarian tribes. By around 500 CE, Europe was a patchwork of kingdoms ruled by barbarian kings. The most notable were the Ostrogoths in Italy, the Visigoths in Spain, and the Franks in what is now France. These rulers and their elites, a mix of Roman and barbarian blood, slowly adopted Christianity. But these kingdoms struggled. The great cities of the past were emptying out, some turning to ruins. Roman roads fell into disrepair, cutting off communication and long-distance trade. Coins disappeared, leaving no money to pay for professional armies. Literacy dropped sharply, and with it, the ability to run organized governments. Most of all, peace and safety vanished. Europe became a fragmented rural and poor place, a shadow of its neighbors in the east and south. In the 6th century, the Byzantine Emperor Justinian dreamed of reuniting the old Roman Empire. He managed to reclaim Italy from the Ostrogoths, but soon new invaders, the Lombards, swept in. The Byzantines had to accept that the split between East and West was permanent. Then, in the 7th century, another seismic shift happened. Arab armies, fueled by the rise of Islam, surged through the Middle East and North Africa, creating a vast Islamic caliphate. Where there had once been one dominant civilization, there were now three: Islamic, Byzantine, and the struggling medieval West. For a moment in the 8th century, it looked like the fragile West might fall entirely. Muslim forces crushed the Visigothic kingdom in Spain and raided deep into Frankish lands. But in 732 CE, at the Battle of Tours, the Franks, led by Charles Martel, stopped their advance. This victory halted Islamic expansion in Western Europe and marked the rise of a family that would shape the continent's future, the Carolingians. Charles Martel's son, Pepin the Short, seized the Frankish throne in a bold move. He battled the Lombards in Italy and gifted land to the Pope, creating an independent papal state. Pepin's son, Charlemagne, became a legend. Taking the throne in 768 CE, he spent decades fighting and expanding his realm until he ruled most of Western Christendom. On Christmas Day, in 800 CE, Pope Leo III crowned him Emperor of the Romans. For the first time in over 300 years, the West had an emperor again. Charlemagne's Carolingian Empire became the first great power of medieval Europe. Charlemagne didn't just conquer, he inspired. He supported a cultural revival, often called the Carolingian Renaissance, aiming to bring back the lost knowledge of ancient times. His empire spread political ideas, structures, and the dream of a unified Christian West across the region. These became the building blocks of medieval society. But the empire didn't last long. Without strong infrastructure, a robust economy, or good communication, centralized rule was impossible. After Charlemagne's death, his grandsons fought over the empire. In 843 CE, the Treaty of Verdun split it into three parts. The Middle Kingdom faded quickly, leaving West Francia, which would become France, and East Francia, the future Germany. These areas fragmented further under internal strife and external threats. In the 9th and 10th centuries, Europe faced a new wave of invaders. Vikings from the north sailed along coasts and rivers, raiding and spreading terror. Magyars, later known as Hungarians, swept in from the east, looting settlements. Muslim pirates attacked southern shores. Europe was under siege from all sides. As central authority weakened, local lords grew stronger. Wooden castles sprouted across the land, serving as fortified homes for noble families who controlled nearby peasants and extracted resources. These lords ruled through force. Military changes, like the invention of the stirrup, made cavalry the dominant force on the battlefield. Only nobles could afford the horses and equipment needed, turning them into full-time warriors. In this world of warrior nobles, power came through a system of loyalty called vassalage. A lord granted land and protection to another in exchange for military service and allegiance. Kingdoms became tangled webs of personal ties and obligations. Kings were often weak, outshone by powerful vassals. This setup, known as feudalism, defined Europe for centuries. It would take a long time for strong, centralized states to emerge again. But change was on the horizon. By the 10th century, the climate improved, boosting farm yields. Invasions slowed as Vikings and Hungarians settled down and blended into Christian Europe. In some areas, kings began to reassert control. In Britain, King Alfred the Great and his heirs united Anglo-Saxon kingdoms into the Kingdom of England. In West Francia, Vikings who settled in the north became loyal to the Frankish king, transforming into French Christians called Normans. Their region, Normandy, acted as a shield against other raiders. In East Francia, Otto of Fry, king of the Germans, defeated the Hungarians at the Battle of Lechfeld in 955 CE, ending Eastern invasions. Otto was crowned emperor in 962 CE, founding what would later be called the Holy Roman Empire. After centuries of chaos, Europe was stabilizing. The year 1000 CE marked a turning point. The next 300 years brought growth and prosperity. Warmer weather and new farming tools sparked an agricultural boom. More food meant more people, and populations grew. New villages and towns popped up, while existing ones expanded. Forests were cleared for farmland, fueling economic growth and a trade revival. Bustling markets and trade routes led to rapid urbanization. Cities grew, becoming centers for a rising merchant class, who often broke free from feudal lords to govern themselves. This was especially true in Italy, where merchants revitalized Mediterranean trade. Life improved across the board. Art, architecture, and music thrived. Literacy rose, and the first universities were founded under the church guidance. European thinkers rediscovered ancient knowledge, sparking another cultural renaissance. But Europe wasn't just growing inward, it was pushing outward. Aristocrats from the Carolingian heartlands conquered new lands, expanding the boundaries of Western Christendom in a process sometimes called the Europeanization of Europe. In 1066 CE, William the Conqueror, Duke of Normandy, invaded England. At the Battle of Hastings, he defeated the Anglo-Saxons, turning England into a Norman stronghold. In Iberia, Christian kingdoms in the north battled Muslims in the south, slowly reclaiming territory in what they called the Reconquista. In southern Italy and Sicily, Norman warriors took lands from Byzantines and Muslims, creating another Norman kingdom with the Pope's blessing. In Eastern Europe, German settlers moved into Slavic territories, and Europe's ambitions stretched even farther. In 1095 CE, Pope Urban II called for a crusade to free Jerusalem and other holy sites from Muslim control. Crusader armies marched east, setting up states along the Mediterranean. Though these outposts were eventually lost over 200 years, they showed Europe's newfound boldness. Meanwhile, the Catholic Church was transforming. Early in the Middle Ages, the Pope had little power beyond Italy, and the Church was controlled by local nobles. But in the 10th and 11th centuries, reformers sought to free the Church from worldly influence and build it into a powerful, centralized institution under papal rule. Pope Gregory VII clashed with Holy Roman Emperor Henry IV over who could appoint bishops. The conflict saw dramatic moments, like Henry begging for forgiveness in the snow at Canossa. Though Henry later forced Gregory into exile, by the 12th century, the papacy emerged stronger. The Church became a well-organized hierarchy with vast resources and influence across Europe, led by the Pope as an absolute ruler. Kings watched the popes rise with envy and began consolidating their own power. During this time, the number of nobles grew, and castles evolved from wood to stone, becoming larger and tougher. The ideal of the Christian knight and the code of chivalry refined aristocratic culture. But in some regions, kings started to overshadow the nobility. In England, the Anglo-Norman kings built a compact, centralized state, unlike the feudal chaos on the continent. In Iberia, the Reconquista strengthened Christian kings, helping them form unified states. In France, the Capetian dynasty slowly expanded their lands, creating a stronger kingdom. However, in the Holy Roman Empire, the opposite happened. The empire fragmented into a patchwork of independent principalities. Emperor Frederick Barbarossa tried to restore its glory but failed, and the title of emperor became largely symbolic. The Central Middle Ages were a time of progress. Agriculture boomed, cities grew, and culture flourished. But around 1300 CE, the climate worsened, growth stalled, and famine spread. Worse was coming. In 1347 CE, the Black Death, a devastating global plague hit Europe. Within a few years, it killed about 1/3 of the population, a staggering loss. Entire villages disappeared, and the plague returned in waves for centuries. Yet, amidst the tragedy, there was recovery. For survivors, the aftermath brought opportunities. With fewer people, land was plentiful, and labor became valuable. Workers and peasants gained bargaining power, demanding better conditions. When nobles resisted, revolts broke out across Europe. Most were crushed, but over time, change came. In Western Europe, peasants won new freedoms, and workers earned higher wages. From this darkness, creativity emerged. Innovations like windmills, watermills, eyeglasses, and advanced metalworking transformed daily life. The printing press revolutionized knowledge. In reviving cities, a new cultural movement, the Renaissance, took hold in Italy, aiming to surpass the achievements of ancient Greece and Rome. Scholars developed fresh ideas about humanity's place in the world, labeling the past 1,000 years as the Dark Ages, and seeing themselves as the bridge to modernity. Warfare also changed. In the late 14th and 15th centuries, gunpowder reshaped battles. A simple infantryman with a gun could take down a knight, and cannons could breach the strongest castle. Maintaining these new armies was expensive, something only kings could afford. As they centralized military power, kings strengthened their control over nobles, who shifted from warriors to administrators and courtiers. The modern sovereign state was taking shape. These turbulent times tested Europe's military might. The 100 Years' War between England and France devastated the French countryside. A peasant girl, Joan of Arc, inspired French troops to turn the tide, eventually pushing England out. In Iberia, the marriage of Ferdinand of Aragon and Isabella of Castile united Spain. Their forces conquered Granada, the last Muslim stronghold, in 1492 CE. These events laid the groundwork for modern nation-states like England, France, and Spain, while places like Germany and Italy waited centuries for unification. As the Middle Ages ended, Europe had not only recovered from the Black Death, but had rebuilt itself stronger. Its gaze turned outward. By 1500 CE, Portugal navigated around Africa to the Indian Ocean, opening trade routes to the Far East. Spain looked west, crossing the Atlantic to reach the Americas. Christopher Columbus's voyage in 1492 CE is often seen as the end of the medieval era and the start of the modern age. Over the following centuries, European expansion would reshape the world, creating the global landscape we know today. This is the story of medieval Europe, a tale of resilience, reinvention, and the birth of a new era.